Welcome everybody to another Standard Education production. I am the all-American American history teacher, the gold standard of economics, Professor G here, and today for our AP Economics lesson, we are going to take a look at opportunity cost. Remember, in our last lesson, we went over the fundamental questions that each society must answer, and in capitalism, we said that for the how question, how are goods and services produced, that in capitalism, it is the most efficient way. But efficient, we have to scientifically quantify. So how do we calculate efficiency? We calculate efficiency with a concept called opportunity cost. And the definition of opportunity cost is in order to produce 1 unit of good X, how many units of good Y are sacrificed. So to calculate efficiency, we are looking at who sacrifices less. We're not looking at marginal utility. That is where we're measuring what we add. Here, we are comparing what we are losing when we produce. So when we produce 1 unit of good X, how many units of good Y are we sacrificing? We are then going to compare two people or two nations, compare their opportunity cost, and the person or nation with the lower opportunity cost will be said to have the comparative advantage, which means that that person or that nation sacrifices less when they are producing and is therefore more quantifiably efficient and should therefore then specialize in that task. And there were 2 different types of problems for opportunity cost on the AP exam: input problems and output problems. So what we're going to do now is take a look at how to calculate opportunity cost for each of those problems. Because each circumstance is slightly different, the formula will be different for each, but what the formula leads us to will be the same. So the first type of problem we have is what is called an input problem. And in an input problem, we are taking a look at how many resources, usually we see on the AP test time, easiest resource to measure, but it could even be like acres or something like that. So how many resources, so resources, the time is the variable to produce 1 unit of a good. So the unit is the constant, and the resources, or the time used, is the variable. So let's do a silly example, one I do in class, and one from a review book, is let's say the time needed to complete 1 chore. We have Mike and Debbie, 1 load of dishes, and 1 vacuumed room. So to complete 1 load of dishes, Mike takes 30 minutes. To vacuum 1 room might take 60 minutes. For Debbie, it's 45 minutes each. And then the question is, well, who should do what? So based on this chart, you might say Mike should do the dishes and that Debbie should vacuum the rooms. Why? Because they do them faster. But this is not calculating efficiency. This is a concept called absolute advantage, something which the AP test will have you find, but because you're not calculating efficiency, this is not how to determine specialization. So absolute advantage in terms of input is just raw number, who is quicker or who uses less resources. So absolute advantage for an input question. It will be different for an output question. Absolute advantage for input is who uses less resources, and usually for time, it's just who does it quicker. But put a big X next to absolute advantage because we do not use absolute advantage to determine specialization. We use comparative advantage, as we saw before in the previous slide, which is comparing opportunity cost. So how do we compare? We have to compare who is sacrificing what, who sacrifices less. That person has the comparative advantage, and therefore they should specialize. So for input questions, to calculate opportunity cost, we do X we have to calculate X over Y, or more simply, chosen over given up. So we have to calculate efficiency. X over Y, so for an input question, we have to calculate efficiency, which is X over Y, chosen over given up. So for input questions, we might look at this question of Mike and Debbie and say, okay, Mike should load the dishes because he does it in 30 minutes compared to Debbie's 45, and Debbie should vacuum the rooms because she does the task in 45 compared to 60. That is called absolute advantage. We are just comparing raw numbers, no calculations, and that is not how we make specialization choices. We're just looking at raw numbers, absolute advantages, put a big X next to absolute advantage in your notes, because that does not determine specialization. The AP test will ask you about absolute advantage as a concept, but do not use it to determine specialization. What you have to do is you have to calculate opportunity cost. And then for input, we are comparing the task chosen over the task given up. So what we are going to do now, to put all of your numbers in one space so we don't have math all over the place, our next step is to create a chart that is the same as this chart but slightly different, that we're going to put all of our opportunity cost calculations in, and then we will be able to take a look at who should specialize based on comparing their comparative advantages. So let's take a moment, everyone, let's play along at home and make the exact same chart, but instead of this chart, we're going to add the opportunity cost of one dish. So let's take a look at our new chart. So now we have our new chart. We have Mike and Debbie still, but notice very particularly we have our new chart says opportunity cost of one load of dishes, one vacuumed room. This is because, remember, opportunity cost, it's when producing 1 unit of X, how much of unit Y are we sacrificing? So remember, for opportunity cost of input, it is chosen over given up. So let's plug it in, let's do this together. So for Mike, he is choosing to wash a load of dishes, 30. By choosing to wash the dishes, he is sacrificing, he is not doing the vacuuming, divided by 60 equals 1/2. 1/2 what? 1/2 a load of dishes. Which mathematically makes sense. In the 30 minutes that he could do the dishes, he could have done half a room of vacuum, half a vacuum room in 60 minutes. So we would say the opportunity cost of one load of dishes is 1/2 a vacuum room. So in the time it would take for Mike to do one load of dishes, he is doing the dishes and he is sacrificing, he is not doing the vacuumed room. So we are putting in the context of the other. When he chooses to do the dishes, he is not vacuuming the room, so we would say the opportunity cost of one load of dishes is half of a vacuumed room. And then we would flip it. Now I know you could do the reciprocal as a shortcut, but it always pays to do the math because it's forcing you to double check yourself. So let's say he is now choosing to vacuum the room. We're going to do 60. If he's choosing to vacuum the room, he's sacrificing, not doing the dishes. Divided by 30 equals 2. 2 what? 2 loads of dishes. So we would say the opportunity cost of one vacuumed room is 2 loads of dishes, which if we go back numerically makes sense. In the 60 minutes it takes him to vacuum a room, he could have done 2 30-minute loads of dishes. Now Debbie, a little simpler. She has 45 and 45, so she is choosing to wash a load of dishes. She is not, in that same time, vacuuming the room, so her opportunity cost of one load of dishes is exactly one vacuumed room. And the reverse, Debbie is choosing to vacuum the room. By vacuuming the room, she is not washing the dishes. So we'd say the opportunity cost of Debbie, the opportunity cost of Debbie vacuuming one room is one load of dishes. And the phrasing is very important, that we're recognizing that in doing 1 unit of X, she is sacrificing however many units of Y. So as I'm telling you, the vocabulary and the sentence structure, it's very specific each time. So now we see each person's opportunity cost, and we could calculate their comparative advantage. We could compare who has the lesser opportunity cost. So for a load of dishes, Mike, it takes to opportunity cost of one load of dishes is half a vacuumed room, versus Debbie, the opportunity cost of one load of dishes is one vacuumed room. Mike sacrifices less when completing this task, when producing one, because that's what he's doing, he's technically producing, when he's producing one load of dishes. So we would say Mike has the comparative advantage and should therefore specialize in washing dishes. Versus vacuuming, Mike, completing the opportunity cost of Mike vacuuming one room is 2 loads of dishes, and the opportunity cost of Debbie vacuuming one room is 1 load of dishes. Debbie has the lesser opportunity cost, so she has the comparative advantage, and she should specialize in vacuuming the room. So this is how to solve an input question. You have the original chart. Take note of who has the absolute advantage, but be careful, we do not use absolute advantage. In some situations, each person might have, in some situations you might have, let's say Mike also takes 45 minutes to wash a load of dishes, and Debbie takes 45 minutes to wash a load of dishes. If the question said that on a multiple choice or on a free response, and it asks you who has the absolute advantage, the answer, if each of them takes the same amount of time to do something, the answer would be neither. That neither has the absolute advantage over each other because they both do it in the same way. So which is also why we don't use absolute advantage. Sometimes they might be the same and neither of them might have the absolute advantage. So always remember, you see all of our math is in one nice neat space. Take this chart, make it an opportunity cost chart, put all of your math here, and then circle who has the comparative advantage, and fill out the full sentence for that person. Now let's take a look to finish off the lesson at output questions. So now for output questions. In an output question, we are dealing with how much is produced. So the production is the variable in a given time cycle. So the time is the constant. This makes these questions a little confusing because in each question, either input or output, you have both time and production. It's up to you to recognize which is the variable and which is the constant. If production is the variable and time is the constant, it is an output question. So let's take a look at this practice question. We have the USA and we have Japan, and it is the amount produced in one day. So the day is the given time cycle. The day is the constant. The day is not changing. What is the variable, what is changing, is the amount each of them produces, or is being compared as the amount produced. So for America, America can produce 4 cars or 12 computers. Japan can produce 2 cars or 8 computers. Now first, the test is going to ask you, who has the absolute advantage? And for output questions, absolute advantage, the raw number advantage, is who produces more. Notice it's different, the absolute advantage is different now from input to output. In input questions for absolute advantage, we are looking at the lesser number. But for output questions, we are looking at the greater number because we are comparing what the amount produced. So in this question, the USA actually has the absolute advantage in both goods. That America produces more cars in a given time cycle than Japan. America produces 4 cars compared to 2 in one day, and America produces more computers, 12 computers compared to 8, also in the day. Now, it wouldn't make sense for America to do both, even though America produces more, which is why we have to see the comparative advantage, who should specialize, and then ultimately we are going, later on in the course, we're going to compare their opportunity costs to come up with the fair terms of trade. So that's later on in the course, but trade ultimately comes from comparative advantage. Who specializes? Nation A does one thing, Nation B does the other thing, and then the two come up with fair terms of trade based on their opportunity cost. We're going to learn how to calculate that later on in the course though. Now also, opportunity cost, for opportunity cost, we are looking for the same thing. How much is sacrificed of Y in producing 1 unit of X? So the definition of opportunity cost actually does not change from input to output. What does change, because the circumstances are different, is the formula. So for output questions, we are looking at Y over X, or given up over chosen. In input questions, we do X over Y, chosen over given up. So let's take a look at the chart. The first thing we do, so to solve these problems, the first thing you do, look at absolute advantage. Remember to put a big X next to absolute advantage in your notes, because do not get tricked into using absolute advantage to determine specialization. We have to first quantify efficiency. Now the next thing we do is we create a blank opportunity cost chart. We have basically the same chart, except we are adding in this blank column opportunity cost of 1 car and 1 computer. For America, and then we are plugging in our opportunity cost. So I'm going to do the whole chart together to make sure that we understand. So for the USA, to produce 1 car, the opportunity cost of 1 car, to make 1 car, we are sacrificing, giving up computers, so the 12 goes on the numerator. We are choosing cars, the 4 is the denominator, 12 divided by 4 is 3. What does that mean? That if we read the sentence fully, we would say the opportunity cost of 1 car are 3 computers. And now for computers, by choosing to do computers, we are sacrificing cars. So 4 goes on top on the numerator. 12, we are choosing computers, goes on the bottom. 12, so 4 divided by 12 equals 1/3 of a car. What does that mean? That the opportunity cost of one computer is 1/3 of a car. So that means in the time it took to make one computer, we could have made 1/3 of a car. Now let's take a look at Japan. For Japan, they are choosing cars, so they are choosing cars. So if they are choosing cars, they are sacrificing computers. So we're going to do 8, what they are sacrificing, given up over chosen. 8 divided by 2 is 4 computers. So for Japan, the opportunity cost of one car is 4 computers. I mean, in the time they made one car, they could have made 4 computers. They are giving up making 4 computers in order to make that one car. Now, to make one computer, they are choosing computers. So they're choosing computers, that's the denominator. They're choosing 8. They are sacrificing, they are not making cars. 2, so 2 divided by 8 equals 1/4 of a car. Say the sentence fully. The opportunity cost of one computer is 1/4 of a car. That by making this one computer, they are sacrificing making 1/4 of a car. So now we very nice and neatly have all of our math in one chart. From this chart, we can now compare, comparative advantage, who has the lesser opportunity cost. So for cars, America has the comparative advantage of making cars because when we make one car, to make one car, we sacrifice 3 computers. Compared to Japan, when they make one car, they are sacrificing 4 computers. So America has the comparative advantage, and we should specialize in making cars. Let's take a look at computers. For computers, America sacrifices 1/3 of a car. Japan sacrifices 1/4 of a car. Japan, according to my measuring cups, 1/4 is less than 1/3. Japan has the lesser opportunity cost, so therefore Japan should make cars. Japan should make computers, and Japan should specialize in computers, and America should specialize in making cars. On the AP test, be very careful of making sure, number 1, is it input or output? Read the question carefully, identify the variable and the constant. Step 2, identify absolute advantage. Make sure to put a little X by it though, for your own knowledge that this is not how you choose specialization. Step 3, make a blank corresponding chart, labeling opportunity cost of one car, opportunity cost of one computer, or whatever it is, so that the language is already built into your chart, and then put all of your math in this chart, so it's in one space. You can compare the numbers nice and neatly. Circle who has the lesser opportunity cost, the comparative advantage, and then fill it out. There's a lot of math, but these questions are kind of really a gift because they're very linear, and they're very linear. You have to do X and Y, that's it, and that's the question. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Remember, money never sleeps.